Millennium Daytime Bulletin. I'm Shweta Simar from New Delhi and you're watching Millennium News Channel 24. Today I'm bringing you the latest news from around the world. Let's begin with today's top headlines. South Korea's parliament votes to impeach president over martial law debacle. Israel captured Syria's tallest mountain just hours after Assad fell. Trump vows to end very costly daylight saving time. Georgia's turmoil deepens as ex-footballer named president. Crown of Thorns returned to Notre Dame Cathedral after fire. Xi Jinping not expected to attend Trump's inauguration. Canadian government moves to end weeks-long postal strike. US market mixed, Brazil plunges while Mexico shines bright. England chip away at New Zealand in Hamilton. Lindsay Vonn to make World Cup skiing return in St. Moritz. Now let's look at the details. South Korea's parliament voted to impeach President Yoon Suk Yeol on Saturday in an extraordinary rebuke that came about after his own ruling party turned on him following his refusal to sign over his short-lived martial law attempt. Of the 300 lawmakers, 204 voted in favor of impeachment on charges of insurrection, while 85 voted against it. 3 lawmakers abstained and 8 votes were nullified. The impeachment motion, which required a two-thirds majority to pass, alleged that Yoon committed insurrection by staging a series of riots and threatening the National Assembly and the public. Yoon's presidential powers and duties have been suspended and Prime Minister Han Duck-soo has taken over as interim president. The Constitutional Court will now deliberate on whether to uphold Yoon's removal, with a decision expected within 180 days. If the court rules against Yoon, he would become the second president in South Korean history to be successfully impeached, triggering a presidential election within 16 days. It is the second time in less than a decade that a South Korean leader has faced impeachment proceedings in office, and means Yoon is suspended from exercising his powers until the decision is finally adjudicated by the country's Constitutional Court. Following the vote, which sparked jubilation among protesters outside Parliament, Yoon conceded that he will stop temporarily for now, but the journey as to the future that I have walked with the people for the past 2 years should not stop. I will not give up, he said in a statement shared by the country's presidential office. With all the encouragement and support for me in mind, I will do my best until the last moment for the nation, he added. The country's Prime Minister Han Seok-soo, who will serve as acting president under South Korean law, told reporters that he would devote all his strength and efforts to stabilize operations of state affairs. Ang Soo-woo, a lawmaker with the Democratic Party, told CNN Saturday that the great democracy of South Korea will survive and will be born again after the impeachment. The dramatic decision marks the culmination of a stunning political showdown after Yoon briefly declared martial law on December 3 and sent soldiers to Parliament, where lawmakers fought past troops to enter the building and vote down the decree. Yoon's gamble backfired spectacularly, galvanizing many in the vibrant Asian democracy to call for his removal. Opposition parties tried to impeach him a week ago, but Yoon survived after members of his ruling party, Power Party, boycotted the vote, saying they hoped the president would voluntarily resign instead. Israel wasted no time after Bashar al-Assad's fall to bomb all the Syrian military assets it wanted to keep out of the rebels' hand, striking nearly 500 targets, destroying the navy, and taking out its claim 90% of the Syria's known surface-to-air missiles. But it is Israel's capture of Syrian highest peak, the Mount Hermon summit, that may prove amongst the most lasting prizes. Though officials have insisted that its occupation is temporary, this is the highest place in the region, looking upon Lebanon, upon Syria, Israel, said Ephraim Enber, director of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy. This strategically extremely important. There is no substitute for mountains. The summit of Mount Hermon lies in Syria, in a buffer zone that separated Israeli and Syrian forces for 50 years until last weekend when Israeli troops took over it until Sunday, and the summit was demilitarized and patrolled by UN peacekeepers, their highest permanent position in the world. Israel's defense minister Israel Katz on Friday ordered the military to prepare for the harsh condition of weather deployment. Due to developments in Syria, it is of immense security importance to maintain our control over the summit of Mount Hermon, he said in the statement. Israel Defense Force IDF has advanced beyond the summit as far as Beqasem, after about 215 kilometers from the Syrian capital, according to the Voice of the Capital, a Syrian activist group. CNN could not independently confirm that claim, as the Syria army and the military of Israel spokesperson said that this week denied forces were advancing towards Damascus. The Israeli have closely crossed the disengagement line in Syria, which threatens a new unjustified escalation in the region, said the leaders of the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, who is now using his real name Ahmad al-Shara, but he added in the statement on the rebels' Telegram channel that the general exhaustion in the Syria after years of war and conflict does not allow us to enter new conflicts. Israel, which has occupied most of the strategic plateaus since 1974, said it acted in self-defense in the face of the political uncertainty in its northeastern neighbor. Since the overthrow of President Bashar al-Assad by the HTS-led forces on Sunday, Israel has also carried out hundreds of airstrikes on Syria military assets, according to a war monitor. Israel Defense Minister Israel Katz have been destroying strategic capabilities that threaten the state of Israel. US President-elect Donald Trump has said he wants to end daylight saving time (DST), arguing it is inconvenient and very costly to Americans. In a post on his platform Truth Social, Trump said DST had a small but strong constituency but shouldn't, and that his Republican Party would work to end it. DST is the practice of moving the clock ahead 1 hour in the spring and back 1 hour in the autumn to make better use of natural daylight. It is observed in a third of world countries, according to Pew Research Centers, including most of Europe. Some in the US, however, have long advocated to end the time-worn tradition. Those who want to stick with standard time say it benefits our health, as it is better to have more light in the morning, paving the way for improved sleep cycles on darker evenings. They say DST can be disorienting to sleep schedules, but other wants to make DST permanent, and arguing that brighter evenings, especially for those commuting from work or school, would reduce crime, conserve energy, and even save lives in terms of reduced road accidents. Both sides say that preferred option would be better for the economy. Trump plans is not the first attempt to alter the biannual practice of changing clocks seasonally in the US. Places around the world that opt out of daylight saving time, and why making daylight saving time permanent was the aim of a 2022 bill that passed the Democratic-controlled Senate. But the Sunshine Protection Act, which was introduced by the Republican Senator Marco Rubio, never made it to the President Joe Biden's desk. Rubio has since been picked up by Trump for the role of Secretary of State under his incoming administration. Former Manchester City footballer has been appointed president by Georgia's disputed parliament after 17 days of pro-EU protest that have swept this country's towns and cities. Michael Kavalishvili, now 53, is a former MP from the increasingly authoritarian ruling Georgian Dream Party and was the only candidate for the job. On Saturday, 224 out of 225 members of Georgia's Electoral College voted for him. The four main opposition groups have rejected Kavalishvili and have boycotted the parliament, insisting that the elections held in October were rigged. Large crowd of protesters facing freezing temperatures gathered outside parliament from the early hours of Saturday morning ahead of the vote. Georgia's outgoing pro-Western president Salom has condemned Kavalishvili's election as a travesty, insisting she holds Georgia's only remaining legitimate institution. Prime Minister Irakli has accused Zurabishvili of trying to harm Georgia's interest, emphasizing that when the term of office ends on 29 December, she will have to retire. We have very strong state institution, so we certainly have no difficulty in bringing the situation under control. He was quoted as saying on Friday that the party colleagues Nino told reporters that Zurabishvili was no longer president in the eye of the public. Georgia is a parliamentary democracy with the president, the head of state, and the prime minister, the head of parliament. An ancient relic said by some to have been placed on the head of Jesus Christ at his crucifixion has returned to Notre Dame 5 years after it was saved from a fire that devastated the cathedral in Paris. The crowns of thorns, comprising a circle of rushes encased in a crystal and gold tube, was brought back to the newly restored cathedral in a ceremony overseen by the Archbishop of Paris, Laurent Urge. The crown was acquired by King Louis XIV of France in Constantinople in 1239 for 1 lakh lives, nearly half France's annual expenditure at the time. Initially kept at Saint Chapel, it was moved to Notre Dame Treasury in 1806, where it remained until the fire, which ripped through the 850-year-old building. Firefighters and police officers formed a human chain to rescue the relic and other historic artifacts in the cathedral. The fire destroyed the cathedral's wooden interior and its spire. The crown, which was kept at the Louvre Museum at one point until the framed cathedral underwent extensive renovation, and has been placed in a newly built reliquary to replace the one from 1806. The ceremony marking its return was led by a procession attended by the members of the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre, a Catholic order of knighthood. The crown of thorns will be displayed for the public from 10 January, French media reporters told. According to the Bible, the crown of thorns was used by Jesus' captors to cause him pain and mock his claims of authority. The cathedral reopened its door to the public on 8th December after extensive restoration work, which cost a reported $700 million and involved an estimation of 2,000 masons, carpenters, restorers, roofers, foundry workers, art experts, sculptors, and engineers. Chinese President Xi Jinping is not expected to attend Donald Trump's inauguration in January after the American president-elect has personally offered an invite to the ceremony. According to the news report, CBS News first reported on Thursday that the Chinese ambassador to the US and his wife will attend the swearing-in ceremony and that other officials from Beijing could also join. CNN similarly reported that a delegation of senior Chinese officials are expected to attend in place of the Chinese president. Trump previously praised Jinping as a brilliant guy and a very good friend, despite Jinping's leading an authoritarian government and squashing pro-democracy activism. But Trump has taken a hard economic stance on China, saying that he has plans to sign an executive order imposing an additional 10% tariff on all Chinese goods coming into US. Caroline Leavitt, Trump's incoming White House press secretary, confirmed that Trump's invitation to Jinping's in a Fox and Friends interview on Thursday, adding that Jinping's attendance was to be determined. She also said that Trump has offered an invitation to other world leaders without giving further details. Trump said Thursday in New York that he was thinking about inviting Xi, and some people said, "Wow, there's a little risk, isn't it?" Trump said, "And I shall, and maybe it is, we'll see. We'll see what happens, but we like to take little chances." The Chinese embassy in Washington told USA Today that it had no information to share regarding Jinping's invitation to Trump's inauguration. The Trump transition team did not respond to a request for comment certain people to this inauguration, though he has not specified who and who would not attend the ceremony. The Canadian government is moving to end a nearly month-long postal worker strike that has disrupted mail delivery across the country ahead of the holidays. On Friday, Labour Minister Stephen Macken ordered the Canadian Industrial Relations Board to send Canada's post employees back to work if an agreement is not reached soon with their employer. Around 55,000 postal workers began striking on 15 November over pay and working conditions. The two sides have since failed to reach an agreement with the federal mediators, concluding a few weeks ago that negotiations were too far apart. The Canadian Union of Postal Workers (CUPW) denounced the government's order in the strongest term. In a statement on Friday, the CUPW called the move an assault on our constitutionally protected right to collectively bargain and to strike. Meanwhile, Canada Post said in a statement that it looks forward to welcoming its employees back to work and resuming its services. The Crown Corporation added that it remains committed to reaching a negotiated agreement with the union, but said it wasn't to do so while also meeting the postal needs of Canadians. The Canadian Industrial Relations Board is expected to rule on Friday, and Minister Macken requests next week. The strike has impacted businesses during one of the biggest shopping periods of the year, with deliveries halted. Inventory has sat in warehouses across the country while shipping costs have increased. Lon James, an Ontario business owner, told BBC last week that he fears the strike is going to wipe out a good number of businesses due to steep financial losses. Now bringing you latest update on today's market trends. Global market presented a mixed picture today as US indices showed modest losses while Latin America diverged sharply, with Brazil under pressure and Mexico rallying. In the United States, the Dow Jones Industrial Average slipped by 0.20%, dropping 86.06 points to settle at 43,828, reflecting a slight retreat as investors remained cautious ahead of key economic updates. The S&P 500 hovered flat down just 0.16 points, reflecting a mere 0-point change, signaling indecision. Meanwhile, the Nasdaq bucked the trend with a small gain of 0.12%, rising 23.8 points, led by selective strength in the technology sector. The VIX or fear gauge fell by 0.7%, showing a modest easing of investor anxiety. The US Russell 2000, which tracks smaller cap companies, dropped 0.6%, pointing to concerns around growth sectors that are more sensitive to economic shifts. In Canada, markets saw heavier declines. The S&P TSX Composite fell by 0.54% and the S&P TX 60 shed 0.52, indicating broad weaknesses in key sectors. Latin America showed contrasting trends. Brazil's Bovespa suffered a sharp decline of 1.13%, falling by a substantial 1,400 points as investors likely reacted to economic or political uncertainties. In stark contrast, Mexico's S&P IPC surged 0.65%, gaining 335 points to 105, reflecting strong local optimism, possibly boosted by favorable economic news or sector-specific gains. Chile's small decline of 0.20, falling to 13.79 points, indicated mixed sentiment in the region. Overall, today's market trends highlight regional divergences driven by local economic factors, investor sentiment, and global macroeconomic conditions. While US market remained largely range-bound, Mexico's outperformance and Brazil's slide underscore the complexity and opportunities in emerging markets. Investors will look ahead to central bank decision and economic data for further guidance in the coming days. The commodity market experienced a subdued session today, with slight declines across energy and metal sectors, while agriculture showed minimal movement. In the energy market, WTI crude oil dipped 0.28%, falling by $0.20 to settle at $71 per barrel. Similarly, Brent crude oil slipped 0.2%, down by 0.1 to $74. These mild losses reflect ongoing uncertainties around global oil demand, coupled with mixed signals on production level and economic growth forecast. Natural gas prices also edged lower, dropping 0.37% to $3. The decline comes amid moderating demand, particularly as forecasts point to more stable, wealthier, and major consuming regions. Precious metals saw marginal losses as well. Gold fell 0.3%, shedding $9 to reach $2,666 per ounce. This decline suggests reduced safe haven buying as market volatility appears contained. Silver similarly ticked down by 0.09, losing 0.0% to close at $31. In agriculture, soybeans showed remarkable stability, ending flat with a minor upward movement of 0.05%, holding at $9. The resilience likely stems from the balanced supply and demand dynamics, with no major catalyst driving price fluctuations. Overall, today's commodity trend reflects a cautious market sentiment. Investors are closely monitoring macroeconomic data, global energy policy developments, and seasonal demand factors for direction. While energy and metal eased slightly, the steadiness in soybeans highlight that agriculture sector is relatively calm amid a largely muted trading season. We'll be right back after a short break. I'm Shweta Simar from New Delhi. Keep watching Millennium Daytime Bulletin.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
back after the break. I'm Shweta Samar from New Delhi and you're watching Millennium Daytime Bulletin. England seamers chipped away at the New Zealand batting on the opening day of the third and final test in Hamilton. Ben Stokes' decision to field first looked to have been a misjudgment as Tom Latham and Will Young added 105 for the first wicket. But England were excellent in scorching conditions across the afternoon and evening sessions to leave the home side 315 on 9 out at the close. Matthew Potts justified his inclusion ahead of Chris Vaux with 3-35. Goss Atherton took 3 of their own and passed 50 wickets in the 11th. Captain Latham and Williamson. New Zealand batting display again hampered by soft dismissal. At one stage, the home side lost 5 wickets for 70 runs. England were eyeing the chance to bat before the close, only to be held by Michael Santner. And the highlight of England's day was still to come from the Matt Henry's hook at Stokes' fine leg. Harry Brook tiptoed around the boundary, relaying the ball to himself and making a devilishly difficult catch look effortless. The retiring Tim South was given a guard of honor and hoiked 3 sixes in his 23, but a swipe too many. Last man Will Rook with Panthers, who went to 50 by hitting point balls on the day for 6. England, already series winner after victories in Christchurch and Wellington, are looking become only third visiting side to take a 3-0 clean sweep in the country. Skiing great Lindsey Vonn has announced that she will make her World Cup return at St. Moritz, Switzerland next weekend. In a video posted by her sponsor Red Bull on Friday, the 40-year-old Vonn said, "So I have some news. My body is finally put back together and I hear St. Moritz in a pretty nice this time of year." Vonn announced her retirement from competitive skiing in his 20s. She said, per Reuters, that the passion for skiing has never gone away. I just wasn't physically able to do it anymore. It was pretty soon after surgery and in the rehab process that I was already doing things that I hadn't done in years. She added that the body was just functioning better. Obviously, I'm a lot happier because I'm not in pain 24 hours a day. I'm getting stronger and better and faster than I was a long period of time. Vonn recently competed in lower level events in Copper Mountain, Colorado in order to gain eligibility to compete at World Cup races. That was all for now. Thank you for tuning in. Stay with us for more updates. Log in to stay updated with the latest news on our social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and TikTok at Millennium News 24. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel Millennium News 24. You can also watch us on Android and iOS devices as well as on Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV and all smart TV platforms. Enjoy entertainment and the latest news with us. Download Millennium TV app, Millennium TV USA for Android and Millennium News on Google. Thank you for being part of Millennium News channel.